Welcome to the Live Greater podcast. Today we have Kristina with us, and she is an artist and a creator and author who ignites the imaginations of children and their parents through limited edition animals, so exciting, and touching storybooks. So welcome, Kristina.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's just so great. So where did your creativity start?
Oh gosh, it started at such a young age. From the time I was a little girl, I always loved drawing. I always loved anything that was very tangible and creative. So at the age of 7, my mom brought my artwork to a local art teacher in our town. And the art teacher, Mrs. Gaquin, Joanne Gaquin, she taught art lessons for both children and adults in her basement, but she had an age limit. And typically, I've actually seen this too in other forms of art where normally 9 is where they take on kids for art. But my mom brought my art to her and she said, I'll take your daughter. And I was 7.
That's
And
awesome.
so I was 7 years old when I first started getting my first formal art training. And although Mrs. Gaquin, I know I'm a grown woman, but I have this thing where if I knew you as a child, you're always Mrs. or Mr. to me. And
Right.
I just want to disclose that. Like,
Yeah.
to me, it's a respect thing. So what Mrs. Gaquin did with me is, she started teaching me technique, meaning shading, perspective, color mixing, those foundations, having me work in different mediums. She also gave me space to play. She was teaching me technique, but she was teaching me technique in a space where I was able to play, meaning that I always got to choose my subjects. And all I wanted to draw for those first couple of years of lessons, I took lessons with her. I believe I was 15 when she stopped teaching. And then I shifted to different forms of art training because unfortunately she moved and had to stop and couldn't teach in the area that I lived in. But what she was doing is, I realize now, which I'm so grateful for, is that space to try things and to create. Because that's the thing with art, there has to be a balance of creativity and discipline. And that's where a lot of creatives can hit walls, because in order to draw well, in order to sculpture well, do anything well, you need to play, but you also have discipline. And a good example I can give for people that are saying, what does she mean?
Right.
I'm a huge Noguchi fan. You'll know Noguchi, like if you look at Conan O'Brien, during some of his late night cycles, he has the Noguchi table. Kristen Davis in Sex and the City, her Park Avenue apartment, the Noguchi table isn't there. If you Google it, you'll be like, oh, I've seen this a million times. Like that's a really as a piece I can say that most people probably would recognize. I actually am fortunate where I live right by his museum. And when I did the tour, they showed his work. They say he started this way, and it was very classical, ornate sculptures, which we all know and recognize. And then he showed his current sculptures, which are featured all over the museum. But because he has such a strong classical background, that's why he could play so much, because he's known for his sculptures. He's known for his round edges. He's known for his, I can't even describe it well. Like if you Google him, you'll see. He's just like, I love him. Like I love his style. Like I think he's amazing. But he had a very, very classical background, which is why he was able to go to such an opposite extreme. So as an artist, as a creator, that's something that I value that my teacher gave me. And even in my future art training, like I was also given opportunities in that way, because you do have to have discipline. And now as an illustrator, like you can't, children's books, illustrations are, I know you're a mother, you mentioned your child to me before we start recording, like the illustrations are a big deal when you're writing a children's series. But again, there has to be a symmetry, there has to be colors need to work, you can't just go all hightail wild, you need to have a balance there.
That's so neat that to have that opportunity as such a young child, to have that formal training really, and to learn so many techniques. What do you have a favorite medium?
I do. So my favorite medium, so I started off in acrylic. So a lot of times when you're starting art lessons, acrylic is a major medium because it's easy to make mistakes. And what I mean by that is you can paint over the paint and not have issues. So I was in acrylic for a long time, but my favorite medium, which I started learning in my teens, is watercolor. And it's actually what I use for all my drawings now.
Oh, good.
Love love watercolor.
Yeah.
Although my two other faves, I actually have three favorites. I know I'm always that person that can never have just one. I always have to have choices.
Right.
I do love ink. I primarily work with pen because I love pointillism, which if you know,
Mhm.
Surratt, Sunday in the Park, the points, like I do
Uh-huh.
genuinely love pointillism. I also love crosshatch, which is where
Okay.
you do, I'm gonna do it with my fingers right now. It's line, and then
Mhm.
line the opposite. So it's a slight shading. But when I'm doing people, because my favorite, that became my favorite thing to draw as a teenager, as I love drawing people, especially kids. And I love drawing my nephew. I'm actually like, hopefully this summer I'll have time to do it. I have this dream of taking an 18 by 24 sheet and doing several drawings of him because he's now 2.5. And my sister's like, we don't have room. I'm like, make room, please. But yeah, drawing my nephew is one of my favorite things in the world, as well as my other friends' kids. And for that, I like pencil because of the
Okay.
contours of the face and I can
Mhm.
get in there. So those are my three favorites. But yeah, and by using all three, I find I'm able to set because they all have pluses and minuses, which is so great.
Mhm.
And there's certain things where I have more freedom in certain mediums I don't in others. And I do cross combine sometimes, which is also fun, which I've started playing with as well, which is interesting because it does expand your work and it does give you more definity and fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. My daughter that we were talking about before, she's an artist and she's constantly drawing.
Oh,
She's been drawing since the womb. So yeah, she loves different, and she was messing with pointillism recently and I think the cross hatching too. So
yeah,
yeah, she loves that.
amazing. I
So
love
that's
it.
so neat. So did you always draw? or or has this been a new thing, like I guess with your teacher, she taught you the drawing techniques and things like that, and have you carried it on, or have you mixed in other things? You're holding someone special in your lap there.
Yes, yes. So I've always been drawing. Even when I graduated, all my degrees are in the arts, and I couldn't. I the reason why I went into corporate is I didn't see how I could make a living
Okay.
from my art, and
The
so I
starving
will be
artist
honest.
meant, thinking, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I'm from a family where everybody's a lawyer, a teacher, or a lawyer, teacher, or oh my gosh, there's one other form. I'm drawing a blank on it, right? Engineer. And then you have me. And so I felt like, well, I have to make a living. And
Mhm.
I was that child who, like I told you before I started recording, I took a look at New York at 10 years old and I said, I'm going to live here. And my parents were very, and still are very strict with me, even as a grown woman. And it was made very clear if you walk out that door, you're on your own. And I said,
Mhm.
okay. And I was. So I had to make a living. I had to pay my rent, I had to feed myself and clothe myself. So I found that way. But even though I did that, I was still drawing. And I actually went back for my second degree while I was working in corporate. And so it
Okay.
was exhausting because I was doing my degree and I was working during the day. I also found my way back into dancing, which really, I think my dancing, I'm honestly looking back on it, and I'm still an active dancer. I'm still an active competitor. I feel that solidified my creativity. Like, I can't let this go. Like, I can't let this go. And when I started my career pivot, one of the things I started doing was making it a point to draw regularly because I was always drawing. And,
Mhm.
one of the things also that kept my creativity going is I am an aunt, I am a godmother. And I started creating traditions for myself where I would make Valentine cards for my friends' kids. So I would draw out these cards and, collage it with stickers. And I'm also a scrapbooker. And when I was healing from a breakup, I found my way into crochet. And my mom was such a character. She'd always say, your great grandmother was like the best crocheter ever, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'm going to learn. And it just took off. And so that also gave me another outlet for my creativity, and crochet led me to also become a knitter. And so I'm now a knitter as well. And it just was this constant. So it was never far from me. It was
Yeah.
never far, even when I was working in corporate. The problem was is I couldn't see how can I make a living on this? How can I sustain this? How can I feed myself? Because it's been made very clear to me, like, you're figure it out. Like, you need to figure this out. And to be honest, like, when I did find this way to create my business, to become an author, to design and create these toys. Like I mentioned to you, now I'm looking at manufacturing on my toys. So I'm realizing, okay, I have to find ways to streamline this now that my books are coming out, et cetera. And that's the thing too, you realize as a creative, when you do find a way to make it work for you and make it work so you are able to live, so you are able to support yourself. But I also realized too, it's not just about me. You know, I am an aunt, I want to be a mom. And I talk to so many parents like yourself that have that creative child. I'm like, no, this is for the moms and dads out there and the kids out there that are creatives and that are looking for answers. Like, you need to do this for them.
Yeah.
Like, this is you sending an example that yes, this is possible. There is a way to utilize your creativity in a way where you're still being your true self and you're still living a healthy, fulfilling life as well. And you're not forced to be in a space where you can't do that. But at the same time,
Right.
yeah, like I am grateful for my time in corporate because it did teach me things where now as an entrepreneur, I'm able to do, because that's the thing as an artist, like no one, even though I have coaches, even though I have instructors, like whether it's my dancing or the characters or my art or my books, like no one's there to say, hey, when's the next book ready? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Like you do. That's the one thing I will say, like you can't, there is that discipline. Like you don't have a boss, like you are your own boss. Like you're
Yeah.
only gonna get better if you put it out there. And I talk to other people like in the dance industry, for example, because I dancing for so long and still dancing, you know, you hear a lot of different stories. And there's this couple that's done some amazing things in their career, and they work a lot with children. And I asked them, well, how do these kids get to the next level? They said, well, it's really up to the kids and the parent. We can only do so much during a lesson.
Right.
Like it really is a matter of choice and responsibility. And as an artist, it's the same way. Like it's a choice. You know,
Yeah.
it is a choice to get up in the morning and say, okay, you know what? This is my quota for the day. This is what I want to hit. This is what I want to do, you know, because nobody's pushing me to do what I'm doing. I mean, I have an amazing editor, amazing marketing strategist, amazing publishing agent. And, you know, it's not their job to babysit me. You know, it's not their
Yeah.
job to say, hey, when's the next edit? When's the next story ready? Like, did you create the character yet? Like, no, like it's my job. It's my responsibility.
Yeah. The desire has to be there, but also the discipline. So yeah, on the
Yes,
creative side. So what type of
absolutely.
dance do you do?
I dance international Latin and I also
Oh,
dance
okay.
ballet as well. So international Latin is cha-cha, samba, rumba, paso doble, and jive. And again, in order to get better, you have to practice
Yeah.
every day. I think a good example of that. So of course, and Mikhail Baryshnikov, love his work. And I remember seeing a clip of him on Larry King, or Larry said, wait, you still need to practice every day. He's like, yes, of course. And now when I hear that, I'm thinking, yeah, of course you do,
Yeah.
because it's a muscle memory. You know, it's like
Mhm.
getting it into your muscles, you know, getting that. And also too, there are days where things come up where you can't necessarily do that, where you can't necessarily practice that day. So you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is consistent. So when you do have days where a curveball is thrown at you, like you have enough in your pocket that you can make up for it. But then again, you also have to be ready to hop back on in a moment's notice too. Like when I say
Mhm.
miss, I mean like miss a day. Like I don't mean miss a month. Like I mean like a day. Like even a day is a lot at a high level, you know. So, but I do believe my dancing, because it's so much of who I am too. I feel like it does give an edge to my art. It has enhanced my art in so many ways, because it gives me like this energy inside of me. It gives me this like, I love it. I love my dancing. I love my art. So yeah, I can't imagine
That's
my life
fun.
without it.
That's so fun. Yeah, we
Yeah,
do some dance in our family as well. But
amazing.
so, and I think what you're saying is like, you know, that consistency. And I think that plays into everything you do and we all do. It's just, if you want to get better at something, you need to be consistent.
Oh, absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
actually how I realized I was supposed to write and illustrate these books. Is I started blogging, and my blog is my baby. Like I love writing my blog. I actually have a second blog now, and But I tell people when I first started blogging, you know, my mom, I just lost my mom, the pandemic hit. And so we're all in that lockdown. And I think I published my first blog. Yeah, I did. I published my first blog like a month before the lockdown. And I saw the lockdown as an opportunity. And I got up every day and I wrote a blog a day.
Wow.
And 90% of those blogs I never published.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, your voice changes, but by writing consistently, it got that rhythm going.
Mm-hmm.
And it got my creative wheels turning. And then by putting out things, like the worst that's going to happen is you're going to take things down. That's the worst that's going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, there's really no, you're really not losing anything, but it is that. But again, it's like with dancing. Like, I mean, I remember watching myself on a video when I first started dancing Latin, and I was so embarrassed. My shoulder was like going. And I got so freaked out. But now, all these years later, I look back on it and I'm still scared to watch myself on video, but it's part of the game. Like, we have to do it. But I realized, no, by making that mistake, you grow that much more as a dancer. And it does take a lot of courage to put yourself out there and to do that. Like, I have one of my friends, because when I did my book launch party at the beginning of February, we did a Facebook Live as well. We streamed it live, for, you know, and one of my contacts said, you know, I'm scared to say anything because it was live. And on the mentality, like, who cares? Just do it.
Right.
You know, but then again, that's my life as a creative. Like, you don't know until you try. You know, you don't know until you try. And it is this courage to put yourself out there. It is this courage to try things out and to test things and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And same thing with being on podcasts. Like, I talk to a lot of people who are developing their businesses, and, you know, even though businesses, excuse me, are different than mine, I often say, well, podcasts to me, like being interviewed by people like yourself, it gives us the opportunity to share the story behind our work. And that's what people want. That's what people are investing in and gravitating towards. And I hear the perfectionism and the imposter syndrome come out of their people. And I suffer from it as well. I'm not going to deny it. I definitely suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, my editor and I had a very beautiful conversation in December where I realized, like, I was, even with all my healing work, I'm still an imposter from time to time. And I realized, nope, shelve that imposter. This is who I am. This is what I do. And, you know, it does take courage to get out there and just try things out and see what works.
Yeah. So in 2018, something happened that made you see some changes you need to make. So can you share that with us?
Yes. So I was in my ballet class and I was doing my last conjugate, which is a big leap. And I landed and I thought the floor broke. Yes, one of my friends was like, of course you thought the floor broke. Why would you break? I'm like, I don't break. It turns out it was me. I went right to City MD, which I'm in New York. So that's like our urgent care. I should probably say it that way, urgent care. Typical New Yorker, like, of course you know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm like apologies, everyone. So I went to urgent care and he said, we think you ruptured your Achilles.
Ouch.
And so it was a whirl of doctor's appointments. And I remember my first tears on that examination table where I was going to miss my coaching with my favorite coach. And that's what I cried over. That was probably like a huge sign that something in my life was off balance here. I'm not thinking about my job. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to get home. I'm crying about my coaching. I'm like, I'm going to miss my coaching. And so luckily I was in corporates. I had insurance. I was able to get surgery literally a week later. It was this whirl of doctor's appointments and working from home. But because of my surgery and the nature of my injury, my office manager said, no, we need you to be on medical leave, meaning that you can't log in. Like, you are going to be, you know, I was still paid my salary, but I couldn't work. So I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, so I was on the sofa crocheting away. And it's ironic because I'm actually not a fan of the show. So I won't say the show because everyone in my life is a fan. They all think I'm a fan. I'm not really not a fan, but there was one character in this series that I do identify with. And it was a point series where she was saying, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to quit my job. And I remember sitting there thinking, I could do that. But I thought, wait, how am I going to support myself? What am I going to do? And then my buddy Alex came over and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep living this double life. Like, you're creative. Look at you. You're a dancer. You're crocheting. You're drawing. And like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? And I was like, yeah. And so I started networking. I started networking while I was on crutches. And when I say networking, I was going on Facebook and DMing people and saying, hey, can you meet me for a coffee? Can we
Mm.
have a conversation? And, I started going to recruiters, I started going to my LinkedIn, and then I realized, you know what? I have all these coaches for dancing. Why don't I have a coach for this?
Right.
Through a friend of a friend, I met my career coach, Matilda. And she does something magical to me that day. She said 80% of jobs are not posted. I was like, I knew it. I knew there was something about this world. And within that first year of working with her, I learned how to write a cold email, which is so important. And it's a skill which is so scary at first, but once you get it down, I promise you, it's a breeze. You're just like ding, 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 ding. But like, I fought her on it. Like, I fought her. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so when I got laid off in 2019,
Mm.
I felt like, you know what? I'm Catholic. So I'm Catholic. And I felt like God was sending me a sign. He knows you want to pivot. He's forcing you into it. So I remember being in the car home because they got me a car like that was supposed to soften the blow of losing your job. And I'm in the car and I'm making phone calls and whatnot. And it was a couple months later where I went on a job interview, and I'll never forget it. I was walking out Pilates, and this woman was the managing director of HR at this great Wall Street firm, beautiful Park Avenue office. Got my resume in there, went for the interview, went great. And then I walked out, I was like, I can't do this again. I'm going to fall back into the same cycle of the beautiful office, promise of the promotion, da, 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 da. And I
Uh-huh.
went back to Matilda in that WeWork conference room. I said, I think I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur. She said, I agree.
Cool.
And then a couple of weeks later, I think it was not even a couple of weeks later, it was like less than a month, I got a phone call from my sister saying our mom wasn't doing well.
Mm.
And I got this urge that night to go online. I started with my grandma, which is why I'm a Lucia. I'm named after my grandmother. And I filed for my LLC. And a week and a half later, we lost our mom. And that was the day I got my first piece of mail addressed to my company.
Wow.
And as I was saying to you before the recording, I was pitching I actually didn't say all of it, but I was pitching two different ideas as a business. And one of the business ideas was these characters. I crochet animals and loveys, and I tell stories to them. That was my basic pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And people kept gravitating towards it. And that's why I filed the LLC under the characters. And so when I first started pursuing this, people were giving me a hard time. They're like, well, how are you going to hand create all these characters? How do you know it's going to be, maybe it'll be too expensive? And I'm saying, no, these characters are going to lead me to an answer. And
Yes.
sure enough, the characters led me to start blogging. Yes, less than a year later, it was like my mom passed in November, got my LLC in November. February of 2020, I started blogging. And then the blogging led me to my X team, where I worked with my messaging on them. And it was working with them that I realized I was supposed to write my book series.
Hmm.
And within that year, things weren't going right. And at the beginning of 2021, I walked away from them, and they weren't thrilled about that, but I had to do what was right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now all those delays were happening because my grandmother and mother knew I wasn't supposed to be working with them. And they were delaying things because they knew I needed to get out on my time, but they also knew I needed to get out. And then I went through, of course, you go through that thing of like, shifting and missing the team, but knowing you're not right for you kind of a thing. Like, it's like a breakup, like any breakup, we go through the motions. And I realized, I want to find an editor. I want to find an editor. And my friend Megan said to me, haven't you talked to Susan? Because I was sending all these DMs and these cold emails, and I wasn't getting any feedback, and I was meeting people, but I felt they were more subjective as editors, and it wasn't
Mm.
right. And then I met my editor, Susan Crossman, and I got a meeting with her. And she also invited me to her virtual summit, where I met a slew of people. And the other magical piece of the puzzle is I met my marketing strategist, Melly Hirschhorn. And with Melanie, all these doors have opened, which has been absolutely amazing. And again, it was like this, I was going down this hallway of all these closed doors, and I finally opened that door and walked through it. And now all these things are happening. And Yeah, so it's been a journey. It's been an interesting, fun journey so far. And the beauty is, I know I'm only at the beginning of the
Yeah.
road. Like
Yeah.
there's no, like, if you ask me, I feel like there's no beginning, but I really, and that's the other piece of the puzzle I should share too, is the day after Megan said, "Did you talk to Susan?" I was talking to my friend Liz Reinhardt, who's also a children's author as well.
Okay.
And she shared with me the story behind her last name. And I was like, oh, it's really beautiful. I was really touched by the story of her name and how she was named, et cetera. And it got me thinking. And later on that day, I turned to my sister. It was Easter weekend. So I was with my sister, and my dad hadn't come over yet, like for dinner. And my brother-in-law was out with friends. So it was just her, I, and her son, my nephew. And I said, Laura, I'm really considering taking mom's maiden name as my pen name. I said, I have to look into it, but I'm strongly considering this. And that was a beautiful piece too that came together. So I was baptized Kristina Lucia after my grandma. So my grandma is Lucy, although her legal name's Lucia, although everyone knows her as Lucy. And so I've always been proud to be her namesake, but now it's me, mom, and grandma in every book. So that's how Kristina Lucia Pezza came to be. And
I love that. That is so neat.
Yeah.
To carry that them with you in your journey.
Absolutely. And I have a beautiful christening picture of mine where it's at my dad's house, the original, but I have I took a picture of it at my mom's funeral. So it's on my phone. So I'm able to like post it and use it. It's on my desktop. My great grandma is holding me, and my mom and grandma on either side. And as a Catholic, of course, I believe in my Holy Trinity. However, though, I do believe I have my angel Trinity. So I do believe it's mom, grandma, and my mother are beside me, and they're behind. So when doors close now, even when, like, I'm not saying doors are always opening, plenty of doors are closing too. And I remember myself, and whenever I have a bad day, I have this joke about my grandmother. And if you knew my grandmother, you would be like, oh my God, that's so Lucy. That is so Lucy. So I have this story that I believe God has an office in a waiting room. And I think he goes over his schedule every day with his secretary. And it's like, he's already like, I know, Lucy Pizza, 8 a.m. And I believe my grandma is in there by 7:30 at the latest, saying her rosary. He's like, Lucy, not till 8 a.m. And my grandma in my world, God's Italian. That's just us. Like, that's just like my thing. And he goes, and she's like, what about my granddaughter? What's going on with Kristina? Like, what's going on? And so when I have a bad moment or a bad day, like I always, like, I just hear my mom's voice in my head, like, don't worry, your grandmother's at God's office right now. Relax. Like, she's taking care of it. Like, she's scheduled an emergency meeting with God,
Yeah. They're definitely watching over you, I'm sure. So, and that's neat, that connection that you're carrying on for other people to know, and even if it's within yourself, but to have them on that journey. So can you tell us a little more about your characters, like the one that you're holding in your lap?
Yes. So Bella is the main character. So she's the character, the book series, the brand is now revolving. And in every book, she goes through a transition or learns a skill that we all go through and we all learn. And I really focused on situations and skills that we all learn, because I want to create a place where everyone feels welcome and everyone's able to relate to. And she experiences negative feelings. However, her parents or the other special adults in her life, they give her space to feel those things and relate to her, meaning I get scared as an adult. I still go through this as an adult. And it's like, oh, you do. So it's that bridge between the child and the adult. And when she is able to work through her struggles, she then is able to teach a friend. And she has 5 friends, and they are named after special people in my life. The main character, Bella, is actually my child self. Originally, like I told you before we started recording, when I named the character, Bella came from my friend's little girl's name, Isabella. And as I started writing, I realized how much of it was me. And then also, I thought I knew when I was naming the character, I was too shy at the moment to say it. But I was like, wait, Bella's been your nickname forever and a day. Bella and Beautiful. That's what everybody calls me. And I'm like, why am I hiding this? And so I joked that it took my friend's toddler to help me identify with my inner child. And actually, that was a plate and say, no, this is me. I am Bella. Like, I'm Bella Lucia. That's who I am. Like, everyone calls me Bella. I'm like, why am I denying this? And so that was the main thing. And then the other characters, it was there again, it's just the name. I want to make sure it was just the name. I want to make sure it was relatable. So Annie Puppy is after one of my dance coaches who I don't think we missed a week of lessons during the pandemic. Like, we were lucky to find a studio that will let us work. And so we just had this like amazing time as student coach, girlfriends, just like us bonding, which was really beautiful. And then Gabriel is one of my favorite boy names. And I genuinely love the Saint Gabriel, Angel Gabriel. And also my coach's son is Theo Gabriel. So I saw that as like a little like slow ode to him. And then Briella Giraffe. So the first girl giraffe I ever created was actually for an influencer's daughter, Briella. And so that was like named in honor of her because that was the first giraffe I created. And then Caleb Giraffe is my nephew. And I chose that because my sister, when I was looking at her baby registry, she had a giraffe in there. So again, the first boy giraffes I made were for my nephew, and I actually made a custom color scheme for him, and then it was funny because my brother-in-law calls a monkey. And so my sister said, it should have been a monkey. I'm like, you had a giraffe on your registry. I can only do so much here. Like, it's an honor, people. It's an honor. But that's why I say it's just the name. It's not personality, it's more, and then of course the boy elephant, Ezra, that was named after my cousin's little boy. He's really absolutely adorable, and that's like my little ode. So there are it's more the adults that are named after that. If I name them after someone in my life, it is more their personality. Like, for example, the two special adults that are going to be that are being introduced in my series Beyond Her Parents are her Aunt Sue and Uncle Bob. Aunt Sue is my mom's best friend since high school, Sue Corey. And Sue and my mom, friends since freshman year, my mom's bridesmaid. I've known her since birth. And I can't imagine my life without Sue. Like, she's become a dear friend of mine. She's close to my siblings and my family. Like, I can't imagine life without her. Uncle Bob, that's to my great uncle. And I joke because my uncle and I, it wasn't a perfect relationship. We had our ups and downs, but because this is my grandma's baby brother too. And because I was my grandmother's namesake, because my grandma was a little more generous to me in certain ways, I feel like he was harder and easier on me, if that makes sense. And I always joke because when I was 14, we were in his club, and I always joke he's the first man that ever bought me a glass of wine, because I said, Uncle Bob, I want a drink, and he'd already been drinking. It was relaxed, so he said to the server, could you just leave a glass on the table? I know you're allowed to serve minors. And then when I was 21, he made homemade wine in his basement. It was his father's tradition, and he took it on. And when I was 21, he gave my own bottle. And as a girl, that's a huge honor. That was a huge honor to be given that, because he was very old school. Like, he always had to hear things from the oldest male. Like, it didn't, even though the girl in the family was older, it didn't matter. Like, she'd have to go to her brother and say, you need to talk to Uncle Bob. Like, very old school Italian, very traditional. So the fact that he gave my own bottle at 21 and continued to give my own bottle till he passed, like, it was a huge honor. It was a really huge honor for me and him. And so he's another one of the special adults in her life. I mean, I keep out the hand waving, the yelling, the character. Or I promise you, everyone, he's gentle. Like, he's gentle. And my grandma will be coming in too. My grandma will also be mentioned. There will be an Aunt Lucy in there too, because I can't not have grandma in there. Right. I'll hear about from my mother. I hear my mom's voice. Like, did you include your grandmother yet? Did you include your grandmother yet? I'm like, Ma, I'm on it. I'm on it.
I'm getting there. So where can people find your books and your characters? They can get a hold of those, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'll make sure I send you all the links. So my website is www.curated, CCOKL.com. My
Okay.
books are up there. They are going to be live on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Target. We're just waiting for all the print to go through. We're actually in the process of that. So it's really exciting. By the end of this year, we're going to have about 6 or 7 books out, which is like really amazing. And then I'm
Yeah,
working
that's
on more in
exciting.
the pipe too. Yeah, totally. And then the characters are on my website as well. And like I said, I'm looking on all these amazing things. And I do have a gift for your audience. I do have a freebie coloring, drawing, a printable for you guys. So I'll make sure I
Awesome.
share that link as well. And yeah, keep you guys posted on all the goodies that are coming up and whatnot. And that's another, I'll mention that too. That's another piece too. That's why I say over 7. So there will be, ideally, the plan is that 6 storybooks are coming out this year.
Mhm.
And then in addition, I'm also putting out my first, my 2 first formal coloring books and activity
Oh,
books.
okay.
Because when I talk about my mission being communication, and again, like, you want to make things accessible for every family. Like, that's why I chose to illustrate my characters and animals. And that's also why I'm so big on coloring and so big on activities, because it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by art. But then again, we can all doodle, we can all color.
Yeah.
And it has great health benefits for us at any age level, whether it's a toddler or it's a grown adult. And it's also
Yes.
a great way for you to be able to sit with your child and relax, and also be able to observe
Yeah.
what they're doing. And then again, depending on what your needs are, like, I've been with my girlfriends and I've seen them give their kids activity sheets where they work on scissors. And so to me, it's like, well, you cut out the coloring drawing, or I had another friend of mine who had me on her podcast, and she was all about budgeting. And we talked about laying out different coloring materials. And if a child uses up one material first, it's like having that conversation. Well, we need to wait for this, and like, subtly mentioning that budgeting element, that things cost money and we can't just run out or click Amazon Prime every time we run out of our favorite marker. It's like, no,
Yeah.
we need to, like, because even as an artist, I do that too. I'm like, okay, I need to budget out, like, okay, what colors am I using? Because it's easy to go crazy, even as an
Yeah.
adult woman. So I will be sure to send you all of that information to share with
Yeah,
your
we'll
audience.
put that all in the show notes. And it's interesting that you mentioned about the coloring, with relationships building, because I remember as a small child, one of my memories as a little kid is my mom. I was coloring on the floor in a book, and my mom came over and just asked if she could color with me, and we just sat for a long time, and she taught me some coloring techniques that she liked and stuff. And I don't know, that's just a very vivid memory for me. And it was a relationship building opportunity there, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about, and that's why too, when people say, well, why books? Why coloring too? There is an intimacy.
Hmm.
There is a quiet intimacy about reading a book, whether it's alone or with someone. And same thing with coloring. Like, it's that calm, quiet moment to really connect with someone. Because I feel like, especially in this day and age, and I imagine as a parent, you're much more exposed to it than me. There's such a pressure of the things and the this and that and the bells and whistles and all these things. And it's like, you don't need all of that. Like,
Hmm.
all you really need is just a piece of paper and a pencil,
Yeah.
and that's really what I feel I'm going for. And that's also too, like, something I'll mention really fast, like with the characters, because even as I mentioned, as looking at manufacturing, like when I drafted my email, and my strategist Melanie thankfully is helping me with this process. She, when I was drafting it for her to see what I would send people, it was very clear. I don't want sounds in the characters. I want just them. Like, I want
Hmm.
just them like she is right now. Like, yes, Bella has doll joints, so she doesn't move, but beyond that, I wanted a space for the child to create, because quite frankly, it's so difficult as an aunt now to find a toy that doesn't require batteries.
Oh yeah.
And I imagine as a mom, you've experienced this, but like,
Hmm.
every mom I talk to hates the noisy toys. The
Right.
dads hate the noisy toys. And I actually, like, a really fast story. Like, so my sister's mother-in-law bought my nephew a kitchen. So I'm not the put together girl. I create from scratch, but I don't put things together. That's just like not my jam. Like it's
You're not
I
the
know it's such
engineer.
an oxymoron. I'm like, no, I'm not the engineer. No, that's for other people. Like, no, I create my own stuff. I'm not an engineer. And it's ironic because my dad's an engineer. And so you can only imagine having a creative daughter. It's like, what do I do with this, God? What do I do with this fate? But so her sister-in-law's put it together, did a beautiful job. And then, but the microwave, and the noise, and it sounded just like the real microwave. So as my nephew is pushing it, I thought, like, I had to look, I'm like, wait, is it the toy? Is it the real microwave? Like, what's going on? And so I turned to my sister and I said, okay, so I'm placing a bet here. The $10 says either A, this toy breaks within a day because he's pressing it so often, or you and your husband find a way to get the batteries out because you're so tired of the noise. It's crazy, but every family I talk to, if it's not that, it's, or my cousin's a little girl, it's her toy kitchen with the popcorn thing. And it's like the popcorn. And I'm like, what? Is there no battery? Is there anything without batteries nowadays? It's like crazy. So yeah.
And your character's so cute. Your little elephant. I love it. It's so adorable.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, and she's actually an original creation of mine. So that's the thing too, as a creative, which I'm really proud of. I'm also a baker and a cook as well. So I do make my own recipes. Italian. I also, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because one time someone suggested that I bring over something store-bought. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Like one of what actually happened recently was at Christmas. I make all the Italian cookies and I cook throughout the year, but at Christmas I do a baking marathon where I bake like 9 different cookies and create boxes. Like I bake throughout the year, don't get me wrong, but like a Christmas is like my big like finale of the year showcase. I mean, I know all my Italian ladies out there, you know what I'm talking about, or you know what I'm talking about because your mom and your grandma are doing this. We all know. All right. And but I brought it to my friend, and keep in mind, my friend is Italian. He's from Bologna. And so I always get nervous bringing stuff to someone who is really from like, not like me, who's like American and born on this soil, So he looks at me and like, he's like my uncle. Like I love him. And Lorenzo looks at it, he's like, why did you waste your money? I'm like, Lorenzo, what kind of woman do you think I am? Do you honestly think my grandmother and my mother would be happily bring you store-bought cookies? Of course they're homemade. Who do you think I am? And he actually, and weeks after, he's still giving me a hard time. He's like, I know. You're like, what kind of woman do you think I am? I'm like, I know. Like, what's the matter with you? Like, what's going on? But I seriously was like, no, these are homemade. I would never bring you store-bought. Like, what were you thinking? What are you thinking? It's it's really rude. Like, to me, it's rude. To me, it's like walking with dirty shoes into someone's house. Like that's the equivalent of bringing someone's store-bought. Granted, but flip side, I am not insulted if someone brings me store-bought stuff. Like I should phrase that too. Like that's just me. Like that's even at Christmas.
Because you're creative and you want to show that creative side and through your cooking even. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it happened at Christmas too. Like I wanted to make another dish, and my sister kindly suggested we'll have too much. And I had to take a step back and think about it. And I was like, okay, Kristina, this is you, the crazy Italian hostess who thinks that people are not being fed for like 10 days straight. They're going to starve to death. So like I realized, okay, one less dish is okay. People are not going to starve. But I really had that moment like, oh, we're not going to have enough food. I'm my mother's daughter. I can't help it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kristina, for being on here. This has been incredible. I love your energy and just the creative advice you've been giving and just an example. It's so, I love it. It's so good.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.